Welcome everybody, thank you so much for coming. We're excited tonight. We've got some great presentations that are the culmination in some ways of 3 years of hard work. These particular projects lasted for about 20 weeks, but there were multiple terms of building skills, there were other terms of building relationships, and today our students get to show off. This is a time when I want to celebrate many of you in the room for getting to this point. This is their third year PhD students, so this is the last class. This is the last night that they'll be together as a cohort. So just want to congratulate you all for getting to this point. I recognize all the hard work and persistence. I've been here every Thursday night for 3 years with no breaks, for 6 hours at a time, staring at us, talking to us, challenging us, and it's been a blast. You know, we've had harder times, we've had good times, we've had fun, and so hopefully tonight will be a lot of fun too, and we'll each get to hear about each other's work and share a little bit with some guests. So basically, I've asked each of the students in the group to present for no more than 10 minutes. And we do have a timer. Tiffany was did she? Ray is our timer, okay? So Ray will be the one to wave at you and say, let's wrap it up there. But yeah, so just 10-minute presentations on the story of the project that you did. And we're going to start with Jackie Samuels, who's going to tell us a little bit about her project.
My nephew just graduated from high school, so he's getting ready for college, and he's like, I can't believe I have to take a class for 2 hours. I'm like, honey, mine was 6. And it was so strange because he just froze over and he was like, so I was like, see, this is going to happen. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. It's so great to see you and to see my cohort, who I terribly miss. You know, I just told you that on Thursdays, it's really, you know, it was a really long period of time, but I always enjoyed the conversation, and I'm really, truly going to miss it. But I want to tell you about Tiny Feet. This is where I did my consulting work. Tiny Feet is it's a dance group that works and operates out of South Chicago in a little community called the Bush community. So if you know the steel mill workers in South Chicago, that's where it's located. And basically, when I was working with this group, I guess some people will wonder, you know, like, why did I choose this as a consultation? It's because it's a nonprofit. And as much as we bank on these larger institutions, sometimes it's these small nonprofits that really need that little extra boost for sustainability. And when you think about it, they're the ones that really get the community, they get the residents, they understand what it is that they're doing, and then they build great relationships, and there's always this beautiful mutual trust that's happening. And so I really wanted to do this because these are the kids that I really care about, because I do work in the South Chicago area. But this event right here are some of the kids that Tiny Feet has this opportunity to teach dance to. And this was outdoors of the community center in which they participated, called Neighborhood House. Nice community garden there, all these kids and mixed races and cultures and ethnicities. They had a great time. Well, this cultural center closed down. And Tiny Feet had an opportunity to work there with the kids in the area. And when they did, the kids had a good time. They loved to do the tap dancing, and they had a culminating event, and the principal from the school down the block had a chance to see it. And so she saw it and she said, those kids you have there, he's in my office every day. He is so bad, I can't believe you're getting this much out of this kid. And so to their fortune, they were offered the opportunity to actually be a part of the school, and so they found the space for them. So I felt this organization was at a really good pivotal time. They were 5 years into existence, they've acquired the space, and now they want to really see how they can generate more revenue in their organization. So it's 3 dancers, 3 veteran dancers. And I have to say, this is neighborhood house, and this is what it looked like. This was a little Buddha sculpture for peace in the community. And this is the center that closed down. And what was so sad about it was that, you know, this is the only place for this community to go to. And for me as a consultant, I had to figure out how can I make this organization sustainable. So I worked with their board of directors. Their board of directors, I was wondering what, you know, how they were going to, what they were going to be like. So I was able to sit in on one of their board meetings, and I was very impressed with them. To be 5 years in existence and to have a $250 gift for a nonprofit, I thought was fairly good. And what I realized is that we had to figure out how do we squeeze a little bit more money out of the board to help them to be a little bit more sustainable. So I created an evaluation for them. And the founder of the organization was very happy. And one of the things she said to me was, you know, I'm so glad you did this because I didn't know how to broach the question of how can you help me and bring more money into the organization. So we did our online evaluations to see who do you know that can potentially bring more resources into the community. How much more money can you really give? You know your gift yet is $250, but can you do a little bit more? So she was very pleased with the results of that project. And then we looked at her grants. When I looked at the grants, I had discovered that there were things that were in the proposal that wasn't, I think they didn't really understand what the grantor was saying, for instance, in kind. I said, you know, when they asked you what your in kind is, you made it look like it was a deficit. And if it's a deficit, they're not going to want to fund you. So you have a great relationship with your program officer. Give them a call and tell them you just made a mistake and could you change that? And so they were able to do that, and they were able to fill it in, and I created a proposal template for them. Now, I have to say, my challenges. My challenges working with the group was that we had 3 ladies who collectively worked together in all of their decision making. So when I went to meet with them, it would be in a classroom similar to this without the rug, and that's where the activities would occur. So it was very difficult when I was having some of my meetings with them, and I was thinking, oh my goodness, how am I going to get them to really focus? And so the second meeting I had with them, one of the instructors was sick, and so the founder was actually meeting with me and teaching the class at the same time. So I had to kind of think on my feet, and I thought, okay, now how can I make some lemonade out of this? So what I did, I said, you know what? You have your phone on you. How about if we videotape some of the kids that are in this project and see why they like to come to this program? Then I can get their quotes, and I can put them in your template for your proposal. And you can put them, you know, later on in your brochure. So she liked the idea, and it actually worked. And so after that, the next challenge that I had was actually giving the evaluation to the board, because they all lived all over the city, and so they had a hard time coming together and actually meeting with each other. And when it came down to that, I said, how about this? I will we'll do it online, we'll get the results, and because you always do a conference call, with each other, I will call people individually if I have any follow-up questions. And so it actually worked to their benefit in order to do it, and so people didn't have to spend the time that they didn't have in terms of traveling and meeting with them. I found this to be really rewarding because not only were they recipients of a new grant from the Illinois Arts Council, I think it's something that is very valuable in working with in the community. And so when I looked at my work, and my strengths in the project, I realized that in order to do work like this, I have to be very flexible and I have to be very patient, because you never know what's going to happen or what's going to occur when you're doing the consultation. And like, they can be late, I can't be late. They can not follow through, I have to follow through. And so those are the things that you really need to keep in mind, following the trends of what's going on, so that you can always be on top of what changes are there to actually help nonprofits and what they do. The work that they do, there's not one sequin that is never left, in a store. They make sure that they put it on their kids, and they always do some really great work. And this is who I do it for. It's like, this is who it's for, this is our future. And I always think about the value of programs like this, because they, preschool teachers always say they can tell if a child is about to start or join a game by the time they're in preschool. So knowing that these children have this experience for the rest of their life. So that's it, thank you.
Thanks, Jen. So, just want to remind everyone we have food, and we're not going to take a formal break for food, so feel free to, as we're switching speakers, to just go up and grab food, or even while people are talking, we can have it be somewhat of an informal eating experience, so feel free to help yourself with food. Who do we have up next, Rachel?
Well, I know the title. It's Evaluating Task Force Prevention and Community Services.
All right. You ready, or do you want to? So our speakers and students are all jet setters. So Janet's early, got off a flight about an hour and a half ago, raced down here to be with us tonight. So we've got Janet Jamison talking about evaluating the Task Force Prevention and Community Services Organization.
Okay, well, first of all, I'm Janet Jamison, and I am so grateful for you guys coming out to support our team tonight. I am going to be going over one of the agencies that I work with, which was Task Force. It's really near and dear to my heart, and you'll see why as I go through this presentation. The overview includes the program description, a little bit of status on HIV, some responsibilities, background, evaluation, flow chart, welcome well, some of the challenges that I had, as well as some recommendations. All right, so Task Force is the agency that was much needed on the west side of Chicago. It was actually founded in 1990. And we really service a lot of African Americans with HIV. They have STIs, STDs, and they also are of a different makeup. We primarily serve clients that are men having sex with men, and it's much needed. It's much needed. The reason why we actually targeted this particular organization is because, many of the individuals, especially men having sex with men, are unaware that they're affected with HIV. So I just wanted to throw up a few stats. And as you can see on the very first stat, gay and bisexual men of all races are the most severely affected by HIV. And every 9 to 5 minutes, someone in the United States is affected with HIV. I know we don't talk about it a lot unless it's World AIDS Day or some National HIV Day, but at the end of the day, this is happening every single day. As a matter of fact, the stats just came out from the CDC about HIV in Chicago, and we are the number 6 state in the nation with the highest rate of infection. So again, my target audience is really those men that are having sex with men, African American men having sex with men. We do have some Hispanic clients as well. So again, as an evaluator, I was also a board member, so my role was kind of twofold. So it was one of those things where I had to not only talk to the organization, but as an evaluator and some of the things that I've learned throughout the course, I knew that there were some key things that I needed to do. And that starting was, what is it that our organization needs? How are we going to do it? What are we doing right? And what are some of the things that we're not doing so well? Okay, so again, I had to meet with the staff members, the board, of course our clients. We talked about some of the successes the organization was going through as well as some of the challenges. And again, I also met with the community. We had to work with the community leaders to really find out what the needs of our community were. And so before we start the evaluation process, we want to have all those things aligned, which actually made things not easy for me, but it made me feel like I was actually doing the right thing. So, we looked at some of the performance measures, with more measures, which included some surveys, and those surveys, of course, were given to our clients, our board members, and our staff, and then we wanted to find out what we were actually doing. So again, it looks like this. That's task force. We wanted to really highlight some of the issues that we were having, because those issues were leading to us not getting funding. So that's why we pointed that out. So again, we looked at some surveys, we did some data collection, and of course, some evaluation. So again, we started with a goal, some objectives, some activities, and I actually sent all this stuff to Junior in terms of what we did, but I can't go through all of that. We looked at some outcomes and then some performance indicators. Okay, so what went well through this process? Well, I thought the planning actually went really well. We sat down, we talked about it from, as a board member and as an evaluator. And I thought that, kind of wearing both hats, the planning process was well because everybody wanted to do things that would be good in terms of us actually moving forward and making our agency a much better agency. The implementation was a little tough. And the reason it was tough because, I work a full-time job, full-time mother, I travel, I do a whole lot. And so the implementation and me actually being there was quite difficult, but I worked it out. And in terms of evaluation, I actually learned a lot in class, and I used my professor, as someone, the go-to person, to actually really be on the right track and stay on the right track in terms of doing the right thing during the evaluation process. And then right now, we're in the process of making some improvements. Okay, challenges. The challenges is, most of my experience was all textbook. So that to me was the biggest challenge, and I shared that with Judah. And I think that if I had the opportunity to actually work with somebody who was an evaluator, in their setting, I think things may have been a little easier for me. Because one, with me coming in and asking to evaluate an agency that's never been evaluated, they were looking for all the answers from me, and I didn't have them. So that was one of the challenges. And I did put a lot of expectations on myself because I was looked at as the person who was the expert. And although I pretended I was the expert, I really wasn't that. I never let on to them knowing that. And then in the beginning, they had started trying to do an evaluation, and they had an evaluation tool, which was several surveys. And unfortunately, the funding that never panned out. And so instead of me recreating the wheel, I looked at some of the tools that they were using to kind of get the outcome that they were looking for. We went back and, we kept going back and forth in terms of, what they wanted as a question, what they didn't want as a question. And actually, I kind of went through that same process during my dissertation proposal. And again, just wearing two hats, the expectation level was high on both ends. And it was kind of hard to separate me being a board member and being an evaluator of that evaluator, and then meeting the timelines. That's also very challenging when you're looking at doing an evaluation project. You got to make sure that you have the allotted time to be able to do it. And with my schedule, it was really tough because I wanted to be there for every little thing that we did. And then again, making sure that the surveys were completed. Now, in terms of the surveys being complete, my biggest challenge was actually being there with the clients and making sure they filled them out. I learned my lesson as I was doing my thesis project, allowing somebody else to do it, and then when I got my surveys back, they were half filled out. So I wanted to make sure that I got those things completely filled out. And then in the middle of all of this, the person who was the nicest to me was terminated. So he was terminated, and I felt really bad, but obviously he had been there for a while. Things weren't going the way they should have been going in terms of the upward mobility of the agency, so he was terminated, and I felt really bad about that, because he really was doing everything he could to help me make sure this project was finished. So my recommendations would be to just try to gain more professional experience. Again, also just build those relationships not only with our community organizations, I mean the organizations that I was evaluating, but community organizations that were like the organization that I had. And then I also really need to learn how to say no, because they were pulling at me from different angles, and I was still going, okay, sure, okay, if that's what you mean, I'll do it. And then just, continue to communicate through the project, which I did, because being a board member, everybody always wanted to know when I was there, what I was doing, what's the outcome. As a matter of fact, we have a board meeting tonight that I could not make because they wanted to know about all of the stuff that I've gone through. And then just enjoy what you're doing. And because I have such a passion for people with HIV and mental illness, I'm in my element. So I enjoy being around them. I loved it. The whole project from beginning to ending turned out extremely well, and I'm actually really excited that I actually had the opportunity to do this. Questions?
So what process were you evaluating? Were you evaluating the entire program, or were there specifics of the program that you looked at?
Well, yeah, I'm really happy you asked that question, because one of the downfalls of the program was, funding is limited all over. You know that with pretty much any agency. So we weren't getting, those grants that we needed to get, because we couldn't actually prove that what we were already doing was successful. Success meant that, we were seeing less HIV, and we were getting more clients to come to our agency. We also were looking at, where people coming in to get the protection that we were providing. We were also educating them. We were giving them the clinical information about HIV, and for those that were positive, we were educating them in terms of not transmitting the HIV. West side of Chicago actually has the highest rate of HIV and STDs and STIs in Illinois. So we're right in the center of where it all is. So we're seeing our clientele continue to go up. I tell you, one of the things that we did realize in all of this was a lot of our clients are now being harassed, especially those that are transgender, when they're coming to the agency. So when they come into the agency and they're leaving, they're not protected. And so we actually met with police, the chief of police in that district a couple of weeks ago, and we kind of talked about how can we get protected, how we protect our clients when they're coming here to trying to do the right thing. So that's, just looking at all the, we do drug needle exchange programs. We also provide housing for those who don't have housing, and we've lost so much money, we're not able to do that like we used to. So we're trying to get that grant money coming back in so that we can actually support the agency in that sense.
Thanks. We'll have maybe time for more questions for everybody after, if you're able to stick around. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
One more reminder, we've got lots and lots of pizza, so help yourself during the transitions. Also, if I can ask folks, if you're willing to slide a little bit this way, everybody, because we have a little room, and we're going to slide in a few more chairs for those who are standing room.
Yeah, I think you're probably splitting.
Me.
We'll save some chairs back here in the corner. Folks want to grab those.
I'll sit right behind you.
So we've got Rachel here to tell us about helping to get for some funding with the Chicago Dancing.
Thank you again, everybody, for coming out tonight. So I work with a company called, or organization called the Chicago Dance Institute. It's a small 501c3 nonprofit.
Their founding director is actually the only full-time salaried person that is actively part of the organization. Everyone else who contributes their time does so on a volunteer basis. And they actually have like musicians, they have dance instructors who again all do this on their own time. And their goal is sort of to bring dance to Chicago's disadvantaged youth for a number of reasons, which I'll talk about. This is just an image. This is 3rd through 5th graders at one of the schools. And so this is one of the volunteer dance instructors who has a background in dance as well. And their ultimate goals really are to hopefully increase like sense of community and empowerment within their children, in addition to academic achievement and academic engagement. They believe strongly that the program can have a significant impact. A little bit about the program. There's a couple different versions, a 2-week and a 15-week version. And it's integrated into the school's curriculum, so it happens during the day as opposed to most programs are usually after school. So this way everyone can participate. And it's currently in 3 Chicago schools. 2 of them are public and 1 is private. Harold Washington, Burr, and St. Mary's. So since 2009, they've actually served over 1,000 students. So it's a fairly newer organization, and being as small as it is, it's actually pretty impressive. So I want to talk a little bit about how I became involved and why I chose this particular topic area. I'm actually working with this organization for my dissertation, where I'm doing more of a program evaluation piece in a way, really looking at some of the measurable effects of different areas of their program. The purpose of this project, though, was to look at funding sources and apply for a grant, which I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So, as I said, it's really to research some grants, find one that we both agreed on to submit a full proposal for. I had initially wanted to look at capacity building grants because at the time they didn't, as I mentioned, it's a very small organization, so they didn't have a board of directors. They didn't have any type of, some of those real essential things that you might need to grow, and it's something that's commonly asked for in grant applications. I found out as I was working through a lot of this. So anyway, so we kind of shifted from capacity building grants to more programming grants for the reason that she, at the beginning of this project, she was like concurrently building her board of directors. So within a pretty quick time, she actually was able to get one up and running and established. And she really felt that it would have been more beneficial to have a grant that was targeted towards programming. So that was a little bit of that collaborative, participatory type negotiating that we did to come to that decision. So one of the things that I decided to do then was to help the organization build capacity on their own after this is done. So that meant giving them some resources so that they are equipped to apply for grants on their own after I had gone. So I gave them a couple different tools, including like a PowerPoint presentation where I talked about where they could go to find grants, what are the elements of a proposal, what's the grant cycle. This is actually an example of one of the things I provided them that kind of shows the flow of submitting a letter of inquiry, also called an LOI, then receiving a request for a formal application and so forth. So I personally went to the Donors Forum, which is located in downtown Chicago, and searched there. Also did some Google searches for just smaller family foundations in Chicago. We ended up compiling a list of 11 foundations, and we met and narrowed down some specific grants. And so to date, we've submitted 1 letter of intent, and we have another letter of intent drafted, and then we have 1 full application that's in progress now. So this is just an example, again, of the spreadsheet that, and this is only 1 page out of like 4 pages, where I kept track of all the different information in terms of like the organization, the foundation's focus area, deadlines, their typical grant amounts, information on applications. So it was really a lot of information to keep track of. So the submitted LOI was to the James Tyree Foundation, and that was really our primary focus because of just a good fit in terms of overall mission. They support this type of program in the past. They donate within the Chicagoland area, and also we were able to apply for a multi-year grant of $30,000 over 3 years, which would really be great to have that sort of secure funding. So this is an example of the LOI that was submitted. It's quite a bit kind of chopped up. You can see it's pretty intensive. One of the main challenges with this particular organization is that they didn't have any type of evaluation data really at this point. So that's something that obviously a lot of foundations ask for. So it was kind of tricky when we're writing some of this to sort of, beat around the bush, so to speak, and really hype up other aspects of the program without having that solid data. Another major challenge is that I was new to grant writing. This was my first time doing it, so I was really learning as I was going. I didn't realize how those LOI deadlines could really impact the overall timeline in terms of not being able to meet other deadlines depending on when the LOI deadline was, the review period. You find out that you've gotten invited to submit a full application and so forth. So some of the lessons learned for myself would, if I were to do this again, would be, as I mentioned, to allow enough time and really look at those LOI deadlines. That's something that was one of the biggest things that I learned. I think it's also beneficial to contact the program officer ahead of time if they're accessible, just to kind of like get your foot in the door, maybe build a relationship there, and that's always helpful. I would also schedule regular meetings with my client. We talked fairly regularly, but it was always a lot of back and forth in terms of trying to get together just because of her schedule and my schedule. So I think if we had set meetings, that would have been helpful. Also, we already had an established relationship because of my dissertation. So even with that, it was still a real crunch on time. So I think another consideration is that if you're working with an organization where you don't already have a relationship, it might take a little bit longer because you have to build that trust and build that relationship first. Thank you.
Again, feel free to get drinks and food when we set up and the next person comes up.
Kisha with Technical Assistance for the Alliance Combat Sex Trafficking in Chicago.
Kisha.
Good evening, I'm Keisha Roberts, and my consultation project was on human trafficking, identifying urban traffic victims across governmental agencies. There's two forms of human trafficking, labor and sex trafficking. Labor trafficking is to acquire, recruit, harbor, transport, or obtain a person for labor or service by force, fraud, coercion, for the purpose of involuntary servitude. Sex trafficking, however, is what I will be speaking primarily on. Sex trafficking is when a person is induced to perform commercial sex acts by force, fraud, or coercion, or the person performing such acts has not obtained their 18th birthday. Commercial sex is actually the act of any sexual act where something of value is given to or received by another person. Commercial sex trade can be found in any of these institutions. Most of them are legitimate: strip clubs, adult films, escort service for sporting events, massage parlor, and the illegal activity of street prostitution. So why human trafficking? Why is this an important issue? Well, many of you may not know that Chicago was just deemed the national hub for human trafficking in the United States. And contrary to what most of us believe, is that human trafficking victims are from third world countries and they're brought over to the United States for the purpose of commercial sex trade. However, if you look at the graph, the majority of sex trafficking victims are natural born citizens of the United States. They make up races of 40% black, 25% white, and 23% Hispanic. These are citizens of the United States. In fact, a statement was released that more trafficked victims are U.S. citizens than any other country in the world. As you can see, to combat this growing epidemic, and this is an urban epidemic, this is not what we think human trafficking is, this is an urban epidemic. And in order to combat the epidemic, human trafficking task force have been formed in 39 city hubs in the United States. 39 of 50. So how did I get involved in human trafficking? I started my involvement with human trafficking on the very ground level, doing night outreach ministry, where we went out and ministered to sex trafficked workers in the city of Chicago. So when the opportunity to pick a consultation project came, I thought that was perfect, because as a community psychologist, regardless of whether we are involved in education, social work, the justice system, mental health, or substance abuse, we will come in contact with a sex trafficking victim, because if you look at the numbers, it's growing so fast. So I was doing outreach work with the Dream Center, so I thought it was an appropriate place to do my consultation project, and I reached out to them to do grant writing for them. Met with her. So my experience was a little different, because I had an established relationship with the director of the Dream Center. I had worked with her for over a year doing outreach services. So it was to my surprise that she felt that my skill set would be better used strictly on outreach and marketing. So at the time, I thought that my consultation project was a flop. I came to Judah, can I start over? I'm not working, thinking I'm an intern. I can't do this anymore. However, I was very invested in this organization, and I did not want to stop the marketing or the outreach. So I continued to do the marketing for a major fundraising event, which was the Run for a Dream. I had no idea that marketing for this fundraising event would develop into an entire consultation project. Because while marketing, I contacted so many organizations, I became the person that people started to contact for human trafficking. And I was contacted by DCFS to present for the African American Advisory Institute conference. The FBI wanted to meet with me, their human trafficking division, because they didn't know how to identify sex trafficked victims. They didn't know how to service these victims. I was also contacted by the Cook County Human Trafficking Task Force to sit on the task force. The Cook County Juvenile Court, where I am employed, they asked me to chair a conference, an empowerment conference on human trafficking. And everyone had the same question. How do we identify these trafficked victims? So in that, I developed an entire consultation project where I did a training model. How do we identify urban traffic victims? So who would I be training? FBI staff, the local law enforcement, police departments, DCFS staff, the juvenile justice systems, both probation and parole, and non-governmental organizations that may have to service these victims. So the role that I'll be playing in the training model is that I'll be training these individuals. I would also be assisting and supporting these organizations in establishing their roles and responsibility, not only to the trafficked victims, but also to the other agencies that we will be collaborating, especially the Human Trafficking Task Force, because it's made up of so many different agencies. I identified a tool for identifying traffic victims, but I thought the first thing that we need to do is educate these agencies on the Traffic Victim Protection Act. This was established in 2000 for domestic traffic victims and updated in 2013, and I was shocked to know that most of these agents that follow the guidelines of this act had no idea what it meant. I also developed a technique for identifying victims. One of the conversations that I had was with a person who said, they don't need to do outreach, they don't need to be trained in this, they just need to identify victims. And so my question was, how do you identify a victim you don't recognize? And at that point, they asked me to train them on identifying trafficked victims. So the questionnaire asks questions of like, are you working, who you work for, do you keep your money? Is someone making you perform such acts to live in your home? Because we kind of think that most of the people that are working in the commercial sex trade is by choice, and I beg to differ, most of it is forced. Identifying the readiness to change. After training these agencies to service these trafficked victims, what happens when the victim is not ready? Are we spinning our wheels? So I had to educate DCFS and FBI on this model of change. We have to make sure that these people, these victims, are ready for change. And if they are ready and we go to the action stage and they happen to go back into the life, what do we do with them? We start over. The last thing I designed for the training model, the last module, was a service referral assessment tool. This was important to me because we have to know where do we send these victims. So how do we identify them? Most victims are identified by tattoos, barcodes. When you become part of the trade, you obtain a name from your pimp, or you tattoo yourself with your pimp's name. And the most popular identification is a horseshoe with the pimp's name in it. And what this does is identify this young lady as being part of a stable for a pimp. And a stable is a group of girls that work for one individual pimp. So this is the readiness for change. The change model, I'm sure most of us are familiar with. If you have any questions, we can discuss it during the question and answer portion. The process of referral was important to me because I had to first establish what needs do the victim have. Awareness. If you have a young lady or a male that you think may fall prey to a trafficker, then you're in a wellness awareness process. And for that person, it's time for a prevention to a community agency. If you have a victim that you know have gone through the model of change and they're ready for change, they're at the rescue stage. And at the rescue stage, they can be forwarded to a law enforcement agency that knows how to deal with that need. They may have warrants, and they can filter them out to the appropriate service provider. If you have, without criminalizing them, because we have to stop criminalizing victims. If you have a victim that has ready for rescue and substance abuse issue, they need to be referred to treatment. Most traffic victims are addicted to heroin, so the first thing that they have to do is go through detox before they can go into a residential facility, and we need to train these agencies to recognize those symptoms. The last, homelessness. Many of the girls, especially under 18, they are working for housing. And if this is a need, homelessness is a need, that individual should be directed directly to DCFS if they're under the age of 18 to find shelter and housing. And immigration. If you have an immigration issue, that should be referred directly to the FBI because they are the only agency to handle immigration issues. Expected outcomes. I wanted to see a wraparound service developed for these victims. I wanted to make sure that these victims had the proper pathway to service, that they're not being victimized, re-victimized by telling their story, that we direct them to appropriate services. To establish appropriate roles and responsibilities for government agencies and NGOs. What are we doing with these victims? Are we sending them through the system or are we servicing them? And to create a contingency referral plan for traffic victims, so at the point of contact, that agency know exactly where to refer that individual. And during the question and answer, if you have any questions, I've compiled a contact list for people in the Illinois and Chicagoland area. If you're interested in volunteering, all of these services, all of these agencies are accepting volunteers. Thank you.
So we're going to do one more presentation, and then we're going to show a short video that the group of students behind this group created. And then we'll do a little bit of a question and answer, and then we'll continue on with the last few presentations. So one more is Renata.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out to share with us. It has been an amazing 3 years, very long years. And I just want to give a special thank you to Judah, Suzette, Brad, and Tiffany in her absence for being just an amazing, you all have provided such an amazing support system for us as doctoral students. So, my consultation project was exploring new outcomes for aftercare programs for Mercy Home for Girls and Boys. How many of you all have heard of Mercy Home for Girls and Boys? Okay, a few of you all. So Mercy Home for Girls and Boys, so a little bit about how I actually selected my location. So I'm the founder of the Princess Within Foundation. And the Princess Within Foundation provides self-esteem, mentoring, academic advising to at-risk youth. So I had the opportunity to go to Mercy Home for Girls and actually volunteer and facilitate some workshops with the girls. And here I was, going in thinking I had so much information to provide them with, and I did. However, they also provided me with a wealth of information. And so Mercy Home for Girls is an organization that provides housing for at-risk youth. And so some of the stories that I heard the girls tell about, being involved in sex trafficking and, being on drugs at the early ages of 14 and 15, they taught me so much about life. And so it was an exchange relationship where not only did I share what I had to share with them, they also shared a lot with me. So it was time to choose, locate an organization to work with for my consultation project. I definitely went back there to see how I could help implement some changes in what they were offering. So a little bit of background about Mercy Homes for Girls. They're 501c3 licensed child welfare agency. They're 99.8% privately funded. So Mercy Homes for Girls, they really don't have funding issues. So they are well endowed financially. It's a safe, structured environment. And again, they help at-risk youth to rebuild their lives and redirect their futures. They've served as a solution for kids in crisis since 1887, so they've definitely been around for quite some time. They provide aftercare and community-based mentoring programs. They also provide nurturing, guidance, and opportunities to more than 400 at-risk youth every year. And the girls' home is located in the Beverly neighborhood. They actually have the home that was the former residence of the family, the Walgreens family. So it's a really nice home tucked away in the Beverly area. And the boys' campus is located in the west loop of Chicago. And what I love about Mercy Homes for Girls and Boys is that they offer these at-risk youth a great opportunity. They offer them a great living opportunity. Most of the kids go to private schools. They have access to a wealth of activities, and they also get passes on the weekends to go visit with family and friends. There are more than 225 former residents who currently participate in the program. Aftercare is available to any former resident, so it doesn't matter how long you've been separated from the program or how long you've graduated, you still have an opportunity to come back and be a part of the aftercare program if you are interested in it. And the aftercare program provides lifelong support, encouragement, and resources to former residents. And each aftercare member is provided with a passion plan, and the passion plan definitely identifies SMART goals to help the residents achieve success with their future. And so it's a strength-based program. Some of the principles of the program is that Mercy Home, they say that we best serve others by collaborating with them. Every environment is full of resources, caring, caretaking, and context. Knowledge plus talent plus skill equals success. They believe that every individual group, family, community has strengths. They believe that trauma and abuse, illness and struggle may be injurious, but they may also be sources of challenge and opportunity. So they don't just take in these children and look at them as, already statistics without any future or lost without hope. They really believe in the strengths that these children bring to the table. And they assume that you do not know the upper limits of the capacity to grow and change. So never underestimate the youth from where they are, not knowing what their future holds. They take individual, group, and community aspirations seriously. So they are really invested in exposing these at-risk youth to various opportunities that they would not have otherwise have been exposed to. So some of my project goals. My goal was to evaluate the effectiveness and sustainability of the aftercare program. Now this was a challenge, again, because Mercy Home for Girls and Boys, they're not seeking funding. They're not necessarily in need of funding. So to have someone come in and say, hey, I'd like to kind of look at the effectiveness and sustainability of the aftercare program, that was kind of interesting. I also wanted to track progress of long-term goals for academic success and professional development. I also wanted to assess the successes of previous Mercy Home residents and assess the overall participants' satisfaction with the aftercare program. So the scope of the work that I did, I facilitated 3 meetings with the aftercare program director and staff. I conducted 2 30-minute focus groups with 4 participants. I created an evaluation survey for the aftercare program. I also submitted a recommendation to the program director for the aftercare program, and then I submitted an evaluation report to the program director to submit to their stakeholders. And so just some of the community psychology insight and influence. I took the mind frame going in that the consultation work that I was doing, that I definitely wanted to leave some kind of impact on Mercy Homes for Girls. And so this is one of the quotes from one of our classes. I also had to be very mindful of the fact that working as a consultant, although I was familiar with the organization, that I was still not necessarily a part of the organization. So I had to be intentional about differentiating my role from actually the staff's role. Some of the challenges faced. As a consultant, it was interesting working with the staff. A lot of my requests to the staff lacked follow through. The delay of the reports definitely delayed my progress. So although I had this perfect little calendar and time frame that I planned to stay on track with, it just didn't happen that way. So I definitely learned how to be flexible and patient during the process. And some of the employees maybe So going in and conducting consultation, some of the employees I think felt like I was auditing their program, and I really wasn't. I was just trying to provide some feedback and recommendations for their program. So those were some of the challenges that I faced. And they were good challenges because they helped me cultivate some of my skills. Some of the things that went well. Well, the residents, they felt actively involved in the implementation of possible changes for future residents. They appreciated having an opportunity to have their voices heard, so they were ecstatic when I asked to interview them. The aftercare director was also afforded an opportunity to hear the suggestions that I made as a consultant. And then at the end, the Mercy Home team eventually they became actively involved in the consulting process. Some of the interview feedback, there was a common theme from the 4 residents that I interviewed. And so the common theme was, hey, we love the aftercare program, but we'd like for them to reach out to us a little bit more. Some of the residents said that, it was really good having an advocate there for me. However, it was hard to get in contact with them. And so later on, you'll see one of my recommendations is for Mercy Homes to increase their staff because they only have a staff of 25, and again, they are serving over 220 residents. So it's kind of hard to keep up with that caseload. Again, just some of the feedback. It was all about the advocates. One of the girls asked for a letter. She said, if you just send us a letter, that would be really, really nice. Some of my recommendations, as time changes, antiquated processes must change. So again, Mercy Home for Girls and Boys has been around forever. And so a lot of the people who are working there have been there forever. And so just with the changing of times, I definitely recommend that, they be a little bit more flexible about making some of the changes. Long-term employees must be flexible and willing to recalibrate. So with the move of technology, so we talked about Facebook and social media and how you can follow some of the girls on Facebook and on social media just to keep up with them. So initially, some of the staff were a little reluctant about it, but by the end of our consultation, they were ready and willing to create a Facebook page or a Twitter page or even learn how to do that or Skype, things like that. Also, to increase aftercare staff to effectively accommodate residents and constantly involve the residents in brainstorming sessions. That way you have fresh ideas on the table often. And then go beyond the call of duty to meet residents on their levels. It's hard for these kids coming from homes that are not stable and just lacking the support. And so if they're just kind of left out of there, they're used to being neglected and abandoned and rejected. So if someone's not reaching out to them, they're not necessarily so excited about reaching out to others. And overall, the aftercare program is very effective. The biggest thing was the reported gaps of loss of contact with residents. And again, the follow-up contact process, it needs to be revamped. And also another recommendation that I made was connecting residents with professional mentors in their field would be beneficial to the program's long-term success. And again, the residents were overall successful, satisfied with the program. Advice for future students who are here and working as a consultant in your field work, prepare for the unexpected. Do not take the delayed responses personal. Do not bite off more than you can chew. I had a great list of just goals that I wanted to achieve, and I'm so grateful that Judah helped me kind of cut those down. Be prompt and relentless with your follow-ups, and be flexible and open to change. So I had this plan, and Judah was like, well, maybe not. Maybe we'll get a little different. First I was like, no, Judah, I don't want to do that. But it worked out. I'm really, really glad that I cut off a lot that, what I started with initially. So a few minor revisions to Mercy Home's aftercare program would definitely render improved success and sustainability. And this is one of their quotes that I want to leave with you. We care about you enough to offer both comfort and challenge. Comfort when you're feeling too challenged, and challenge when you're feeling too comfortable. Thank you.
I'm going to ask the 5 folks who presented to come up and take any questions that people have. In the meantime, I'll try to find the URL for the video.
So what do you all know now that you didn't expect when you started the process?
Well, I know that you can't always go away all the research really doesn't go away. I was married to this website opportunity to this organization that I was so tied to. And when that didn't work out, I nearly had a breakdown. I didn't know what to do. But I'm glad that I stuck with the topic because it was something that I was passionate about. And I did not mind doing other things
glad, Judah had us put some things in our contract that I didn't think anything about. One of them was making sure that there was someone, a second person to talk to if the first person isn't available. And actually, in my process, the founder was diagnosed with an illness, and it was going to jeopardize my project. And I was like, oh my gosh, you know, what do we do? And she's okay. But I didn't have to use it because she's fine. But that was important. I think there's something else in there that you had us ask. Oh, the deliverables. Making sure that was clear, because it seemed like in the beginning stages, I think they thought I was just going to be this open book where I was going to do everything for them. And I was getting calls like 10 o'clock at night, and I'm like, oh no, not that, you know. So when they saw the contract, they go back and they knew what I was doing. So, thanks to you.
And likewise with the contract, I think for me, it was realizing that once you have the contract, it could definitely change throughout the process, which ours definitely did. So I think that coupled with, for me, just the timing of things, not realizing how expensive the grant writing process is.
I think what I got most out of my project was really taking advantage of the resources that are available. And when I say resources, I'm talking about anybody who has done any consulting work or evaluation work. Just tapping into those folks and just asking a lot of questions. I think to me, when I did come back to the group, I never told them that I didn't know what I was doing. But I felt very confident given the resources that I was able to do what I was doing. And as a matter of fact, because because the evaluation is turning out the way we wanted it to turn out, I think another thing they were looking at was when the director left, if it wasn't going the way that they wanted it to go, I was firm in saying, hey, we want real world information. We got to use the real world stuff. And of course, wearing two hats, I kind of like, but we got to tell them the truth. And I think, those two things were the things that I got most out of my process of evaluation.
I'll take a shot. I'm from the other college, and I really enjoyed all the presentations. And it struck me that you all had to take on particular roles to make it successful. If you had any insights about what that's like going into the field, taking on a role, and then making it work, and trying to figure out what data and information you're getting back. What's that like?
I guess trying to be the expert, really knowledgeable. When you go in, you got to really know about the agency. And I was fortunate enough to have worked with this agency 2 years ago, and then I stepped away from it, and then I came back to it. And so I kind of knew a lot of the history, but we also did a lot of digging deep into the history of what was going on and where they wanted to go. So that's important in the very, very beginning stages before you even do a contract.
I think that it was important to stay strong in the role that you wanted to play in that agency, because that's where I kind of dropped the ball, because I had a previous relationship with the director, and I did not want to stir up anything, so when she would tell me to go out and do marketing or contact this person, in my mind I'm thinking, you need an intern. I didn't want to ruin the relationship that I had with her, because I had to continue to work with her in outreach. I love outreach, and I didn't want to leave the outreach aspect. But if I had stood strong and said, you know what, I'm supposed to be grant writing, I'm not supposed to be going out and buying roses for the outreach tonight, or going and talking to these individuals. I think that that's important, for the future students. Don't be afraid to stay in the role that you were contracted to do. Sometimes we get a little afraid because we don't want to we want to finish the project, we don't want to step on any toes, but at the end of the day, you have to finish the project, and you have to remain, you don't have to, because I didn't, but you should remain in the role that you started off. But the irony of that is that after doing so much of this leg work for this lady, she actually contacted me because she was at one of the one of the conferences which I presented the training module, and she wants me to train her organization. I'm thinking, should have did that in the beginning, because I knew what they needed. So just establish a role that you're comfortable in and stand in your role. And I would say be willing to play losing categories, because when categories. Because when the staff was delayed in getting me the reports that I needed, I was digging through information and files that I already had, like pamphlets and just past brochures and things like that, trying to piece together, some of the insight from what I already had, but not the most current reports. So I found myself playing board games with myself, yeah.
And I don't know about everybody else, but I didn't get paid on this project. No, I got paid.
For myself and for them, because I figured, like for their program officers, they could say, hey, I leveraged this amount of consulting work. But I had, previous experiences being a consultant early in my life, but it was really more targeted through the arts and education. And I was winging it, I was just like, and I fell into really good situations. But this time around, because I've been doing the 9 to 5, and this time around, I feel so much stronger from the community psychology program. I just felt like I had a lot of tools. It's like I felt like I had, like all the books, they're sacred to me. I will never let them go. All the articles, and then, well, of course, our professors, they've been really awesome, so I just always even feel if I pursue this in the future, and I think I am, I'm gonna do it, I always feel like I have somebody to still call. That's just really awesome. I don't see that often in most programs. So.
And thankfully for us, we had a wealth of speakers that came into our class.
Yeah.
And so it was just really great to hear their experiences about how they kind of fell into consulting.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know for anybody else, but I felt like I kind of fell
That
into
helped,
the field work project. And it was good. Like, it was like, okay, it's supposed to evolve. You're supposed to create this, and it'll be your masterpiece once you're finished.
Yeah,
One more thing about the
As I say, we have time just for one more
Can I just
question.
say one thing about this role? People don't hear community psychologists. They hear psychologists.
Yeah.
And so they want you to go out, talk to her, talk to the problem client. And so you have to establish through the door, I'm a community psychologist. I'm not clinical, I won't be treating these victims, you have to establish that because they don't hear community. They go straight to psychology and they want you to fix everybody's problem.
That is so true. That is true.
All right, one last question, and then we'll switch to our video. Yeah.
So it's interesting that you made that comment, because my question to you was, did you find that there were opportunities to implement some of the community psychology principles that we've been learning about?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, especially when it comes to collaborating and, building a sense of community around trafficked victims. And yes, it was absolutely useful. I could not have did this under any other program, but lost my mind. But so many of the tools, because we so dead on in the community, and we are dealing with all of these agencies, non-profit, government agencies where all the rules change, having that foundation in community psychology and understanding how to get everybody on the same page and create this, this sense of community, that was my saving grace.
Yeah, mine was about empowerment. I mean, these were 3 ladies that worked really hard. They're not getting paid. They're volunteering half their time, and I wanted them to show them where their strengths are, and recognize that and let them know you are going in that right direction. So, and I don't know, like I said before, I really value that small nonprofit because nobody works hard at that.
And I'm also a fan of empowerment, Rappaport. And so just encouraging the staff to really, to establish that sense of community with the residents, and do not allow that time gap. Don't allow the kids to fall out of contact. You reach out to them because we've established a network of community here.
And actually, piggybacking on the community psychology thing, when you're in a group of people that are leaders and educators, and you mention that, they do look at you as the expert. They're asking you all the questions. They're not looking at anybody else sitting on the board or out in the agency. They're looking at you. And when that happened to me, it was very comforting to know that I knew my stuff. And I was able to tell them, talk to them.